Hey everyone, welcome back to A Better Future Starts Here, a live weekly show brought to you by the American Society for the Positive Care of Children. I'm your host, Tracy Kawa. American SPCC is dedicated to improving the lives of children in the United States. We are America's voice for children, bringing you perspective, knowledge, and support from industry leaders and professionals who are dedicated to improving the lives of children and families and caregivers. Today, we're happy to bring you David Long. He's the Executive General Manager of Hansel Auto Group, and the founder of the movement, Pandemic of Positivity. Can't you just eat that up? I love the name. Let me tell you a little bit about David. With 30 years of experience in the automotive industry, David has built an impressive career in dealership operations, holding a multitude of leadership roles that span from general manager to owner and operating partner, vice president of operations, and consultant. David is also a skilled public speaker, and he inspires people all over the globe, sharing topics that he is passionate about, including training, leadership, and team development. He's the founder of Pandemic of Positivity, a movement started in 2020 to bring a higher level of kindness, compassion, and love to our communities, our workplaces, our families, and even to ourselves. David and his wife reside in Danville, California. He has 3 amazing children and 1 beautiful, adorable grandson. David is an avid fan of the game of basketball, and he's passionate about helping others. Welcome, and thank you for joining us today to discuss parenting EQ, emotional intelligence. David, it's so great to have you here.
Tracy, it's so good to see you. I love this, super passionate about this topic, and I'm so glad I could be here with you.
Awesome. So tell us a little bit. We've heard about IQ, right? We all know about our own intellectual quotient. Tell us a little bit about EQ, how it pertains to parenting. Let's unpack that a little bit.
Sure, happy to. So it's sort of one of the things that I think about in all my areas of my life, my business, my personal, my friendship, my parenting for sure. So I was never gifted with an exceptionally high IQ, but I'd like to think that I have a little above average EQ. And that emotional quotient is, I think, what's helped me to make the difference in my parenting ability. And I think it's made an impact on my kids, or at least I've heard it has.
Nice. That's wonderful. So you must have a really close relationship with your kids.
I do. I have 2 girls, a boy, and a boy. Yeah.
Age ranges?
So what I did was, since I'm in the auto vertical, I did every 60 months like a car loan. So 26, 21, and 16.
Got it. Okay.
And
nice.
my grandson's 4 months old.
Adorable. You must be having so much fun with him.
Oh my gosh. He's the best.
He's a love.
Mm-hmm.
So how did you come up with your parenting bar and parenting EQ? Like, tell us a little bit about that. I know you and I in previous conversations, you've mentioned to me about, breaking the cycle. Tell us a little bit about that.
So it's interesting because growing up, I can remember at a really young age, I don't want to be a parent like my parents. I mean, I was conscious enough to know that was not the bar that I was going to strive for, right? And God bless them. They did the best they could. However, I did not want to use them as my measuring stick of what, if I could exceed their parenting skills, then
Sure.
I would have arrived. That was not the bar I was going for. So I had to find and become a student, right, of what does it take to be a good dad? What does it take to be a good parent? And
Right.
it was not second nature, because I didn't grow up with sort of role models around me. I saw my buddies' parents seemed to be parenting the same way my parents did. So I had to go outside of my circle of influence to find what would be a better fit for me. And I'm lucky I did. I'm glad I did.
That's great. It makes me think that, even growing up for me, my mom was amazing. But even with her being amazing, there was still, I was still focusing on what I wanted to do differently. And it wasn't until I became a parent that I could even appreciate some of the things that she was actually doing as a mom.
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm saying? Like, even like, I think we're always focusing on doing it different, doing it better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think I was more focused on what I didn't want to do more than what I did want to do,
Yeah.
until I sort of had that realization that it would be better for me to spend my energy on what would make a better impact versus what would make a poor impact. Does that make sense?
It does. Absolutely.
So, and I didn't want to say, well, I came home, right? I didn't disappear for 4 or 5 days. I didn't come home and I wasn't abusive.
Right.
So what more do you want, right? I didn't want that to be like,
Right. That's setting the bar low.
yeah, you should feel grateful that I came home, and you should be grateful that you're not getting beat within a half inch of your life. I didn't want that to be how I parented.
Exactly. You want to set the bar a lot higher than that, for sure.
Well, it was
So,
about breaking the cycle, right? Just not doing it doesn't break the cycle. There needs to be a modeled behavior of what the cycle should look like.
right. So how did you find that model?
I think it's through taking care of myself, right? Going back, and this is going to sound maybe a little outrageous, but I had to go back and do some reparenting of myself. I had to do some healing of that 8-year-old boy. I had to love on him and help him know that it wasn't his fault, the things that he went through. And when I healed that piece of me, I became whole enough then to be a dad that I can feel really proud of. And I think my kids can feel really good about.
Thank you so much for sharing that, because I have so many women that come on this show and they share, but I think it's a little more difficult for men to be that vulnerable. And it's so important. There are so many people who need to hear this, even for, the women who are watching, who are sharing it with the men in their lives. It's for everyone. And it's absolutely ideal for us to take care of ourselves and know how to nurture and heal ourselves and take care of ourselves, and then take care of our children. 100%. Absolutely.
So there's very, very little, and it wasn't easy, right? I had to lean into some things that were fairly painful. But the more I leaned in, the more I did the work, the cleaner my relationship and my communication ability was with my kids. So it was super cool, and other people.
Absolutely. It just clears the way. It's like you said, it's like clearing a channel.
Mm-hmm.
And it makes all your relationships better.
For sure.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
So tell us how you came up with Pandemic of Positivity.
So,
what was the exact moment? Like, I was in a diner and there was a napkin.
I can tell you the exact moment. So I want you to picture this. So the beginning of 2020, we had a cyber attack in my business. And it was a ransom. It was something you'd see in a sci-fi movie where all of our everything was locked down. We couldn't even log into time cards, right? It was just like, we're done. Can't do anything until we hire a negotiator, pay the ransom, and do all these things to get the keys back to our kingdom. So that's how we started 2020. Okay. And on the heels of that, we had 2 massive wildfires, one of which in traffic almost engulfed my family and I's car. Like, if you saw the video today, you'd be like, oh my God, on both sides of the road, right? People were losing homes. It was very interesting and traumatic time. And then through that, the pandemic started. The actual pandemic, COVID-19, hit America and shut us down, where I had to fire everybody in my company. Hundreds of people. We called it furloughed, but if you get furloughed, you look at your wife or your husband and say, or your kids and say, I just lost my job. No matter how that process or what words you use, still super traumatic, right? In the year 2020, I had 5 deaths in my family. My aunt, my sister, and 3 like uncles, kind of thing. And so it was a tough year, and I'll never forget. 2:00 in the morning, I sleep like a baby every night. I never wake up. I'm a very restful sleeper, and I wake up at 2:00 in the morning and I think, pandemic of positivity. There has to be a way that like-minded and like-hearted people can come together and start pouring in. Because if I'm not the only one suffering here, right? I'm not the only one that's having difficulties. So what can I do to bring people together that are like-hearted like-minded, and just pour energy into love, kindness, compassion, and positivity. And that's how it was birthed. And here
I
we
love that. That was like a divine inspiration in the middle of the night, 2 o'clock in the morning. There you are waking up like, aha,
go.
right, exactly. That's beautiful. That's amazing. Tell me something. We had a brief conversation about how people react sometimes to feeling happy or feeling good. What was our conversation a little bit earlier about how
Earlier about there's some guilt, right?
right.
At a
Yeah.
very young age, I lost my parents. I had a brother that committed suicide. I know very, very clearly the guilt and shame that gets attached sometimes to being happy when people are going through difficult times.
Right.
Right? It's not easy. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I get it. So you were a single dad for many years, huh?
Well, so yeah, it's very interesting. So I'm 29 years old. I'm an athlete. I'm only focused on trying to get my pro IBF card so I could be a bodybuilder. Like that's my life.
Oh, okay.
Triathlons and not thinking about anything. And next thing you know, I have a 3-day-old and I'm a single dad. So I had to, in a state that I wasn't from.
Oh, wow.
So I had no family. Really, the only friends I had were spotters on the squat rack and the bar and the bench press. So they weren't coming over to teach me how to warm up formula or change diapers. So it was super. It was one of the best experiences and the most terrifying experiences I ever have had in my whole life.
Sure. And the most transformational, I'll bet.
Oh, for sure. Like
right.
The person I went into day one as a dad and the person I came out day 100 as a dad, I was two different people.
So had you already done all that therapy work? Had you already done the therapy work, or it was after?
Luckily, I started that journey of healing about 33 years ago, and my oldest daughter's 26.
Wow, that's great.
The timing was good.
What a head start. That's awesome. Thank God.
Gosh, yeah. Very lucky. Very fortunate.
Amazing. So I met you because somebody was interviewing you in the Clubhouse app, in one of the Clubhouse rooms, and you were giving this incredible advice on how you bond with your kids and about your mindset with your children. And I said, who is this individual? I have got to interview him. So tell us some of the things that are important to keep in mind, like that, going back to that whole parenting EQ when you're dealing with your children.
So just a couple days, this is really fresh. So our son is 16 years old. And a couple days ago, I was in the middle of doing something and I hadn't done what I do and have done for 26 years. In other words, I was more consumed with what I was doing than being a dad.
Okay.
And my son was passionate about something and I was short with him. And I want you to think about this. Now, he's 16 years old. He's never heard me short with him. Like, I know. And it was a moment that was very special for he and I. And I don't know if he's watching today, but the impact that had on him. So I stopped what I was doing. I recalibrated. I went out and said, wow. And he said, I know, Dad. I've never seen you like that. I didn't yell. I didn't scream. I didn't bark at him. I just wasn't in that state that you may have heard me talk about in the Clubhouse room. And what a great reminder. No matter how much work I do, there still needs to be that vigilance to reset, reprogram, and get in state. I call it getting in state. I stole that from Tony Robbins so that I can be intentional and show up as the dad that I would feel really good about being. And 3 days ago, I wasn't that dad. Even though it was only like 10 seconds.
Wow.
I was not that dad.
What is that? I love the way you said recalibrate. So what does that state look like?
So think about this. So I have a great commute home. And on my commute home, I could be, on a conference call. I could be processing a bunch of information. But before I get to the house, before I open the garage, I completely recalibrate, right? I remind myself of the things I love most about my family. I remind myself the 4 or 5 things I love most about my children. So when that door opens, guess what energy they're getting? They're not getting the energy of a conference call that was just heavy and tight. They're not getting the energy of a day that maybe didn't turn out the way I wanted it. They're getting the energy of, and I just got goosebumps, I am so happy and so grateful to be your dad. And I'm so excited to be home right now. Like, that energy is so different than the energy I can almost guarantee you most parents walk in the door with.
Absolutely. A lot of parents walk in the door with stress.
Yeah.
Even this year with people working from home and their kids, going to school, virtual school, a lot of stress builds up in the home. But I love the way you stop and you reset, you do a mental check-in. And it sounds like your family gets hit with a pandemic of positivity, like a tidal wave of positiveness. It's beautiful.
Yeah, it's a habit, right? It's not.
Yeah.
So there's this thing. So I've been walking in the house for a long time saying daddy's home. So I do this little whistle and daddy's home. Now, the kids don't come running to me like they did when they were younger.
Does the dog come running?
Oh yeah, every time, both of them. Sometimes even the cats do, and the bird would fly if he could. But so the idea though is that energy attracts it sets the tone, it sets the mood, and I think there's a positive outcome as relates to that. But I'm genuinely like jacked when I get home because I'm not carrying the baggage of my day into the front door.
That's great. And that's just another way to break the cycle for anybody who's listening. Like, you're feeling stressed in that moment, but what can you do? Just stop, think about what is your mental state right now, recalibrate, do a mental check-in with yourself. That's just literally a way to break the cycle. I love it. It's fantastic. So what are some of the other things you and I had previously spoken? We had a little list going on of some of the things that you're very present with your children. You never ignore what's going on. Tell us a little bit about that, the other things that you do that make the day special.
If I go back for any of the younger parents, when I look back, and I hope this is the same for my kids, we have these special traditions individual of one another, so that everybody has sort of like my oldest has her story that she grew up with.
Yeah.
And her DDDD is what I call them, which is daddy daughter date day. And so we have our own memories, like dad and daughter. That's it. There's nobody else injected into that. She has her own bedtime story, right? She gets her own messaging. We have our own individual love time. Same thing with the middle daughter. She had her own story. We used to do these things together that are, looking back, are hysterical, but she just vibrated with enthusiasm about them. And that was our thing. And then my son, same thing. We have a DDD, dad, DSDD, dad son date day.
Sure.
It just, I think, given that individual attention and being present with one at a time, it sends a really important message to how special they are.
Absolutely. And it's really the difference between, like, we've all heard throughout the years, like, one child would say, or, even if we're watching television, one child might say to the parent, well, that's not fair. And I don't really believe that it's really about being fair. It's about giving each child what they need. And it sounded like you did that throughout the years with each child. They each got their alone time with you. They each got their special date or their story, and you fed into whatever their need was. It didn't necessarily have to be the same thing, but it was theirs.
It was theirs for sure. So have you ever heard of the golden rule?
As in, do unto others? Like,
yeah.
back? Yeah, sure. Yeah, that one I heard of.
I always get in trouble when I say this because it's super controversial, and you're probably like, oh my gosh, what's he going to say? This is not a religious comment, but I believe the golden rule in my world needs to be upgraded to the platinum rule.
Ooh.
And what the golden rule is, do unto others as you want done for you or to you.
Yes.
The level above that, the platinum rule, is do for others what they want to have done for them. Because what I need may not be what you need. What I want as a child, right? When I go back and reparent and I help and I heal,
Yes.
that 8-year-old David needs something different than that 8-year-old Alexander. So
Yeah.
the platinum rule is I need to give Alex what he needs. So I need to pay attention to his emotional pool, right? So everybody has an emotional pool. My job as the dad is to fill the pool and seal the cracks.
Right.
Does that make sense? So if I'm giving him what he wants and I'm giving her and I'm filling up his or her pool and I'm doing my best to help them seal the cracks or holes, then they're going to grow up and be whole. And I'd rather have a whole child than have a child that needs to, or than a young adult that needs to get fixed.
That's incredible. That's so powerful. The platinum rule. Absolutely. And yeah, I do get the pool analogy. That makes total sense. Is it beautiful, really amazing. Love that platinum rule for sure. Tell us a little bit about you focusing on what's going right with your kids. I love that one as well.
Yeah.
It's a big one.
So and then this transfers into every part of my life, right? For a while as a leader, I thought there would be some, and I still think there's a lot of people in certain professions that feel like there's some sort of an award or a trophy for finding things wrong, right? And I believe,
Gotcha.
and it's the gotcha, right? I believe that anybody, anytime, anywhere, under any circumstance can find what's not right.
Yeah, that's true.
So I believe it takes work to find what is right and to focus on what you appreciate. And when I do that with my kids, guess what I get more of, Tracy?
What?
I get more of that. But if I'm constantly, your room's not picked up, why'd you leave your socks there? How come you did? Like, I get more of that, right? So I chose early on, and I don't do it perfectly, but I chose early on to get a ratio positive to negative of 5-1.
Oh, okay.
Right. So at work, it's 3-1 because I'm not quite that kind at work, but but 5-1 at home, like, yes, I want to earn the right. I want to really help them see and hear and feel all the things that are going right and that they're doing well.
Yeah.
I feel like I've earned the right because the pool is full, the cracks are sealed, and I can listen, it's time to level up on leaving these socks laying around. Like, you know what I mean? It's
exactly.
And then it's more than Charlie Brown's teacher of wah, 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 wah. All dad does is point out what's not right. And I think that's, for me, that feels better. And I think for them, it lands better.
Yeah, you're speaking to more of what you want to see more of. So it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy for them.
Yeah.
They're hearing it, they're believing it, and they're doing more of it.
It's like my garden. I love, I grow roses. That's my thing. Like, it's weird for you to hear, like, a grown man, bodybuilt, used to be a bodybuilder, He-Man, now I grow roses, right? It's a big awesome. So, but I don't go out and water my weeds, right? So why would I water my kids' shortcomings, right? So
wow.
Let's continue to water what's positive. Let's continue to nurture, continue to fertilize what we want more of, and we get more of that. It's amazing.
Love that. That's great. I'm going to think of your rose garden a lot as I'm parenting. I love this.
I'm not having a good season with my roses, though. It's not the best one.
Say that.
I'm not having the best rose season.
Not?
I need to go back to rose growing school.
101. Yeah. So tell us a little bit about the journals and the affirmations.
So what really warms my heart is to see, and I will obviously would never break their confidence, but to walk by one of their rooms and see their journal out and know that they're doing the work, right? And oftentimes my son will say, you know, I haven't missed a day of journaling and whatever he put today, but he pours in these affirmations and I'm like, sheesh, I wasn't thinking about that at 13 years old, right? I wasn't leaning into the positive and affirming what was good and what I liked about myself. I was sort of self-loathing and critical of myself.
Yeah. That's incredible. It's a great habit.
I think it is paying off.
Yeah.
It's my first go around as being a dad, so we'll see.
That's fantastic. But, the same way that, we as adults, we may have like positive affirmations around. I mean, why not start the kids early? There's so much where kids are making fun of each other, or they're comparing themselves on social media, that I think it would be super helpful for their psyches to, start at the younger the better with positive affirmations. I remember I used to have my older kids look in the mirror, when they were in some kind of funky state. And I used to make them say out loud, I like me, I'm a good person, I like who I am. And it would change their whole attitude. I would see their faces just, begin to light up. At first, it felt very awkward for them. But then after a while, like you could see them kind of, stepping into it, feeling themselves a little bit. It was really nice. Yeah.
Really nice. I think, it's not comfortable, but the opposite is not comfortable either.
It's worse. Absolutely. 100%.
So I say, pick your uncomfortable.
Yeah, truly. So what are your suggestions for creating strong memories and bonds with your children?
I think it's back to the platinum rule, right? What's important? Like if my daughter didn't like baseball and I took her to baseball games because I was a big fan of baseball, that may not create the best memories.
Yeah.
So finding out what's their thing, and then that, I think, is the first step to creating a great memory. The second step is to be completely present, right? If I don't play my son's not into Fortnite, my daughters aren't, they're not into sort of these games, luckily. But if they were into something like that, and I was looking at my phone texting people while I was trying to, that just wouldn't create the memory. So I think that being present, finding what's important to them, pouring into that. And I don't think it needs to be days or weeks, or I think it just needs to be quality. And I do hear quality time's more important than quantity, but I also think quantity has to be important. I'll give you an example. So when I go away on a business trip, I try to take one of them, right? Like, and if I'm speaking in front of, 100 people or 1,000 people, one of my kids, usually my son, because he's still in high school, sitting in the front row, right? So I give him a kiss, I get up, I walk to the stage, and I go back and sit with him, right? Those kind of things in my mind make an impact. And then the nighttime and the dinners and the breakfasts and that stuff, like, I believe in my heart when I check out, those will be the things they think about the most.
Absolutely. Yeah. And imagine your son sitting in the front row, or the girl sitting in the front row and watching their dad, get up on stage with that confidence and deliver messages. It sends such a strong message to them. They really see where they come from, what they're capable of doing, and, talk about setting the bar, right? It's fantastic.
Have you heard of third person affirming?
Third person of speak.
So imagine, so I'll take my daughter at 4 years old and set her up on the counter as I get ready to address, and then I affirm her in front of a whole audience. So, and it's super genuine and super sincere, but imagine what that would feel like for a child to hear their dad pronounce and profess his love and adoration for them in front of a room full of people. I think that's got to be impactful.
Yeah, absolutely. I didn't realize that it had a name, but absolutely. What did you call third person affirmation?
Third person affirming.
Affirming, yeah.
So I walk up to somebody here at work and they're with somebody and I affirm them in front of the other person.
Sure.
It sometimes is more valuable than just sending the text message or walking up and high-fiving them and telling them how great they are, because they get validation then from the third person.
That's funny because I always say that hearing something that someone told someone else in a positive light, that is often even more, valuable than someone saying something to you, because somebody doesn't necessarily have to, they can be saying something to you just to say it. It may or may not be true, but they're not going to go ahead and say something really positive about you to someone else unless they truly mean it from the heart,
I agree. That's why I always say around here, let's get the rumor mill really cooking. Right? I'm at work today. Let's get that rumor mill really humming. So most people assume a rumor mill needs to be negative.
Yeah, it does.
Let's get the rumor mill of positivity humming at a completely different level. Let's
Wow.
talk some real crap, positive crap behind people's back.
Yeah.
You hear that you were talking about them. You talked about how great they were. You talked about how kind they were. And I think people need that.
Absolutely. So let's go back for a minute to your motivational, to your speaking topics, right? What do you speak on? Let's say when you are in front of a room of 100 or 1,000 people.
Usually whatever I'm paid for. No, I'm kidding. No. So I have an affinity for mindset, right? So that I lean towards mindset. I have this thing called step 0. So any industry that I've ever spoken to, any business that I've ever bumped into that does well has sort of a process or steps to the sale or steps to the service or, some kind of a cadence of what they do. So I am of the mindset that the 0 step, the step before all the steps, the step before all the processes is more important than any of the others. And that's mindset. So that's called attitude, energy, and approach. If those 3 things aren't locked in, there's no process or procedure that's going to outpace a bad attitude, a bad energy, or a bad approach. So I like to speak to mindset, and the topic generally evolves around step 0, which is the precursor to any great company.
How interesting. And that's really true because there's no compensating for a poor attitude, and there's no compensating for a lack of preparation.
And I've seen people, in my 33 years in the vertical that I'm in, I've seen people that technically can do the job better than anybody on the planet, but have a terrible step 0. In other words, their attitude, their energy, and approach is not in alignment. So however they're doing the process doesn't equal great results because they're fundamentally need to address that first.
Yeah, they're missing that basic step.
The basic and most important. And that's why I call it step 0, because it's before any other thing we do.
I love all the names. Step 0, the platinum rule. These are great. It's awesome. Terrific.
I'm like the nutty professor, people call me.
I like it. So let's talk about Pandemic of Positivity. I'd like to share with people that they can go here to pandemicofpositivity.com and you can sign up to and pledge to be unapologetically positive, right? So it's taking the POP pledge. And tell us a little bit about that, David. It's not like the heavens are going to open or anything, crazy is going to happen. They're not going to get on this wild, crazy mailing list. But tell us what's going to happen. It's they're taking the pledge. It's something's changing. Something's changing in their soul. What's happening?
So you're not going to get on a mailing list. If you want to join the text group, you can join that. Nobody gets your personal information, and there's no shock collar, right? If you make a pledge to be a little more positive, there's nobody following you around zapping you when you are negative.
Right.
But
so what happens?
It's a personal commitment to just be a little more kind, a little more loving, and a little more compassionate while being unapologetically positive. Right? Just don't hold back. Don't let your light, the fact that your light is so bright, and people don't maybe people don't like how bright your light is or how positive you are. Don't let that slow you down. That's really all it is.
Yeah. I always say, shine at your brightest light so others can shine at theirs.
That's it. That's what we do.
And negativity will drift away.
And it's been interesting because I've gotten a lot of feedback, right? That it's made an impact. Just having top of mind awareness, wearing the bracelet, having the sticker on their water bottle, wearing the hat, whatever it is, right? It just reminds people. Because I think most people have built-in forgetters, right? It's important to us, but it's even more important to us when we have it top of mind.
Absolutely. Okay, I'm going to flash that one more time. I think it's so important. It's Pandemic of Positivity, and it's at pandemicofpositivity.com. So sign up and take the pledge. So before we sign out, any last words? We are so thankful and grateful that you joined us today for Parenting EQ. Any last thoughts that you want to leave our listeners with? Because you really shared a lot with us today, and we're very grateful.
Thank you for that. I think I'd tie it down with one last thought. So for the parents, if I had to boil it down, what was the biggest impact that I think was made as being a parent? The one thing I would say is having my children be outward focused, not inward focused. And here's what that looks like, right? Because it sounds like a great concept, but here's what it looks like. So imagine being 13 years old, right? You're a teenager. You're now a teenager. Most teenagers are what? They're consumed
with themselves and their phones and their friends,
with their image, with their body image, with their how people are perceiving them, what people are thinking of them. It's a scary place. Right? Now think about this. Think about if you were focused on finding somebody that you could identify as being insecure or uncomfortable. Like if that was your number one message, you're 13 years old, you would normally be consumed with your insecurities, but now you're outwardly focused to find somebody that looks fearful, looks apprehensive, or looks scared. And you go out of your way like a beeline to go to that human being and make an impact. Maybe they're overweight, like I was growing up. Maybe their face is full of pimples, like I had when I was growing up. Maybe they're just insecure or having a bad home life.
Yeah.
Imagine the impact if our kids, all of our kids, could go out and just reach one person and make a difference. I can't tell you how many parents have reached out to myself and my wife and said, just last night, I got a text message from a dad. Your son has brought my son out of his shell and helped him to realize that he's a good boy. Like that makes me emotional. Like that doesn't.
Like so beautiful. I have chills head to toe. That is beautiful.
So I think that's the one thing. Like if we could all just have our kids not focused on how they're wearing, how they're acting, what people are thinking of them, but go find somebody that you can pour a little bit of kindness into. Yeah. You'll never, ever, ever understand until you see it, how much of an impact that can make on a kid that's struggling.
Wow.
That's my final thought.
That was a great takeaway. And you know what? I would be remiss if I didn't share with the audience that I am so personally impressed that at the end of every conversation that you and I have, you ask me, Tracy, is there anything I can do for you? That is so impressive. And I feel like if we all just did that, kind of like along the lines what you were just talking about, right? That's being outward focused. If we all just did that, imagine how well we would connect with others. Imagine how we might change somebody's day into, a good day if they were not having a good day. Imagine how their next interaction with someone would be. So I just want to thank you for not only being here and sharing Parenting EQ with our listeners, but I want to thank you, David, for being who you are and who you show up as, not only for your children, but for your employees, for your teams, for me and our listeners. We really appreciate you very much.
Tracy, I mean it. When I ask you if there's anything I could do for you, that's what I actually live to serve. So if I can do anything for you or if I can do anything for the listeners, all you got to do is reach out.
You're awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much. So just hang on one second. I'm going to do the outro. If you or someone are looking for more resources like what you heard today, visit AmericanSPCC.org. And don't forget, while you're there, to download the Happy Child app, which is an incredible free resource that helps you make the vital connections with your child, not just for the short term, but for the long term, and to encourage your child into a lifetime of happiness. So it's a free parenting app, the Happy Child. You can find it on the American SPCC website. And to contribute to the conversation, or if you know someone who is uplifting children and families in their communities, like our guest David, then we'd love to hear from you. Please contact us at AmericanSPC.org. Let's make a difference together. And remember, a better future starts here.